I'm too big for you, he warned, his voice a low rumble of caution. But the black woman straddled the mountain man anyway and whispered fiercely, "Try me!" The townsfolk of Tombstone had written her off as just another broken dove, destined to die alone in the wilderness after her desperate escape from the brothel. They whispered she'd be bones by winter, picked clean by coyotes, and forgotten by spring. But deep in the Arizona mountains, the giant recluse who found her collapsed at his cabin door carried secrets darker than her past. Both harbored knowledge that could topple a territorial conspiracy stretching from corrupt judges to trafficking networks. Yet neither knew the other held pieces of the same deadly puzzle. Would their unlikely alliance destroy them both, or would their combined fury finally bring justice to a lawless land? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The storm struck without mercy. Lightning split the Arizona sky as Celeste stumbled through the mountain wilderness, her bare feet bleeding on sharp rocks. 3 days had passed since her escape from the Tombstone brothel. 3 days without food or proper water. Her legs gave out just as she spotted the cabin. Smoke curled from its chimney, promising warmth and salvation. She crawled the final yards through mud and pine needles. The door opened before she could knock. A giant filled the frame. 6 feet 8 inches of solid muscle wrapped in worn buckskin. His dark beard couldn't hide the wariness in his eyes. "Please," she whispered. He stepped back without a word. The cabin's interior blurred as he carried her to a wooden bed. Fever took hold quickly. In her delirium, she relived the nightmare, the false promises of stage work, the locked room, the men who came and went like shadows. She woke to the smell of rabbit stew. The mountain man sat across the room, whittling a piece of pine. He'd maintained careful distance while she slept. A bowl waited on the bedside table, still steaming. Terror seized her. Every man who'd shown her kindness had demanded payment later. "What do you want from me?" He looked up from his carving. "Nothing. Men always want something. Not this one." She studied his face for lies, but found only patience. Still, she pressed herself against the far wall as she ate. The stew tasted like heaven. Days passed in careful routine. He brought meals and fresh water, changed her bandages without meeting her eyes. Spoke only when necessary, but Celeste noticed things. The expensive books hidden behind practical ones, maps marked with unfamiliar symbols, weapons too clean and well-maintained for a simple hermit. The locked chest bothered her most. On the 4th morning, she tested her strength. Her legs held steady as she explored the cabin. The mountain man had gone to check his traps. She found the key under a loose floorboard. Inside the chest lay wanted posters, dozens of them, but not what she expected. These weren't his crimes. They were his targets, human traffickers, corrupt lawmen, men who preyed on the powerless. At the bottom, she found a tarnished badge, United States Marshal. Her hands shook as she read the name etched in silver. Elijah Stone. The door creaked behind her. "Find what you were looking for?" She spun around, clutching the badge. Elijah filled the doorway, 2 rabbits slung over his shoulder. His expression remained calm. "You're not a criminal." "Depends who you ask." She held up the wanted posters. "You hunt them. The men who destroy lives." "Used to." "Why did you stop?" Something dark crossed his features. "The law failed someone I loved. Someone young. Innocent." Understanding dawned. "Your sister." He nodded once. Celeste stood slowly. The badge felt heavy in her palm. "The network that took me. They're still operating." "I know." "Then why are you hiding in these mountains?" Elijah set down the rabbits and faced her fully. "Because hunting them alone only saves one girl at a time. The system stays broken." She stepped closer. The top of her head barely reached his chest, but she refused to be intimidated by his size. "What if you weren't hunting alone?" "You don't understand what you're asking." "I understand better than you think." She met his gaze without flinching. "I memorized every face that walked through those doors. every voice, every name they whispered when they thought no one was listening. Interest flickered in his eyes. I know their patterns, their weaknesses, their fears. Her voice grew stronger with each word. You have the training and resources. I have the intelligence they'll never see coming. It's dangerous work. More dangerous than what I've already survived. He studied her for a long moment. She could see him weighing her words against his protective instincts. I'm too big for you to handle, he said finally. This life, this mission, it'll consume everything. Celeste closed the distance between them. Before he could retreat, she placed her hands on his massive shoulders and looked directly into his eyes. Try me anyway. The challenge hung in the air between them. Outside, thunder rumbled across the peaks. Inside, two broken souls recognized something familiar in each other. Elijah reached past her and pulled out a leather journal, pages filled with meticulous notes and sketches, names connected by careful lines, a web of corruption stretching across the territory. Judge Morrison runs it all, he said quietly, uses his position to cover tracks and eliminate witnesses. Celeste's blood chilled. She knew that name. Morrison had visited the brothel twice, each time requesting specific girls who later disappeared. He has a weakness, she whispered. He keeps records, detailed ones. I saw them in his private room. Elijah's eyes sharpened. You were in his quarters? He liked to show off his collection, documents proving ownership of people. Her stomach turned at the memory. He called it his insurance policy. For the first time since she'd known him, Elijah smiled. It transformed his entire face. Then we have work to do. He extended his hand. She took it without hesitation. The partnership that would reshape the territory had just begun. Dawn broke over the mountains as Elijah laid out his plan. The leather journal spread across the wooden table like a map to hell itself. Red ink marked confirmed locations. Black ink showed suspected sites. Blue connected the money trail. Celeste traced the lines with her finger. The pattern became clear. Morrison's network stretched from mining camps to railroad towns, each dot representing countless stolen lives. We start small, Elijah said. Build evidence. Work our way up the chain. How long have you been tracking them? 3 years, since they took Sarah. The pain in his voice made her chest tighten. She understood that particular grief. Elijah pulled a smaller journal from the chest, pages filled with sketches and observations. This is everyone connected to the network, buyers, sellers, guards. Celeste flipped through the drawings. His artistic skill impressed her, but something else caught her attention. Details no lawman should know. You've been inside their operations. The mountain man disguise works. They see a giant fool and ignore the threat. She nodded slowly. They did the same to me. Saw a broken girl instead of someone watching, learning. Over the next week, Elijah transformed their partnership into something deadly. He taught her to shoot with precision rather than panic, showed her how to track without leaving signs. Most importantly, he listened when she shared intelligence. Marcus Webb runs the Tucson pipeline, she said during target practice. Scar across his left temple, smells like tobacco and fear. Her bullet punched through the center of a playing card nailed to a tree. He's afraid of confined spaces, childhood trauma. The girls whispered about it. Another perfect shot. Useful. Elijah reloaded his rifle. Webb's been untouchable. Too many political connections. Not if he's trapped somewhere small. Their first mission came sooner than expected. A rider arrived with news of missing Navajo women near the trading post. 3 girls vanished during the full moon. Local authorities showed no interest. Elijah saddled his horse. This fits Webb's pattern. New moon operations to avoid witnesses. Celeste checked her weapons. A small pistol and several throwing knives. What's the plan? You infiltrate. I provide backup. What's my cover story? Traveling woman seeking work. They'll assume the worst and drop their guard. The trading post squatted in a dusty valley like a diseased wound. Celeste approached on foot, her dress torn strategically to suggest desperation. Elijah positioned himself in the surrounding rocks. 3 men lounged outside the main building. Their eyes followed her approach with predatory interest. "Help you, miss?" The speaker matched Webb's description perfectly. Scar, tobacco stench, nervous energy that suggested confined spaces would terrify him. "Looking for work," she said quietly. "Any kind." Webb exchanged glances with his companions. "Might have something. Come inside." The interior reeked of unwashed bodies and despair. Celeste forced herself to remain calm as Webb led her toward a back room. The space grew narrower with each step. "Wait here," Webb said, then locked the door. She was alone for 30 seconds, long enough to spot the trapdoor hidden under a rug. Voices drifted from below. Female voices speaking Navajo. She'd found them. When Webb returned with rope, she was ready. "Funny thing about small spaces," she said conversationally. He paused, suspicious. "They make some folks panic." Before he could react, she shoved the heavy wooden table against the door and extinguished the single lantern. The room plunged into absolute darkness. Webb's breathing changed immediately, rapid, shallow, terrified. "Let me out," he gasped. "Tell me about Morrison's operation." "I don't know what you mean." She knocked over a chair. The crash echoed in the confined space. Webb whimpered. "Judge Morrison, the territorial trafficking network, your role in it." "You're crazy." She began stacking furniture against the walls, making the room feel smaller. Webb's panic attacks intensified with each thud. "The Navajo girls. Where does Morrison send them?" "Phoenix," he sobbed. "There's a house on Elm Street. Morrison owns it through a false name." "What else?" "Railroad connections. He ships girls east in cattle cars, makes it look like legal prisoner transport." Celeste continued her interrogation until Webb broke completely. Names, locations, financial details. Everything Morrison had trusted him to know. When she finally opened the door, Webb collapsed in relief. Elijah stood in the doorway, having dealt with the other guards. "The girls?" "Basement," she said. "Traumatized, but alive." They freed the 3 Navajo women and provided horses for their return home. Webb and his men found themselves tied up with their own ropes, left for tribal justice. As they rode back toward the mountains, Elijah studied his new partner with respect. "Where did you learn interrogation techniques?" "Survival. You listen when your life depends on information. The psychological pressure, making the room feel smaller." Celeste's expression darkened. "Men used fear against me for years. Time to return the favor." They made camp under stars that seemed brighter than before. The first successful mission had proven their partnership worked. "Webb gave us Morrison's Phoenix location," she said, updating their map, "along with railroad schedules and financial records." She looked up from her notes. "We're really doing this, taking down the whole network. Together." The word carried weight beyond their professional partnership. In the firelight, they recognized something deeper growing between them. Respect had blossomed into admiration. Admiration was becoming something stronger. But first, they had a territory to save. The Phoenix safe house crumbled under federal investigation within a week. 12 women freed, 2 corrupt officials arrested. Webb's confession had opened doors that Morrison couldn't close, but victory came with a price. Word spread through the criminal network like wildfire. The Mountain Man and his mysterious partner had become legends. Some whispered they were ghosts. Others claimed they were federal agents working in secret. Morrison knew better. "Find them," he told his remaining lieutenants during an emergency meeting in Tombstone. "Bring me their heads." Back in the mountain cabin, Celeste studied bounty notices with their faces sketched in remarkable detail. Someone had been watching them. $5,000, she read aloud. "Each." Elijah cleaned his rifle methodically. "Morrison's getting desperate. Good. This changes everything. We can't operate in the open anymore. Then we go underground, hit him where it hurts most." She looked up from the wanted posters. His reputation. Over the following month, they became something new. Not just hunters, but architects of justice. Each mission built toward the next, creating a cascade of evidence that painted Morrison's corruption in broad strokes. They freed a wagon train of Chinese women bound for California brothels. The driver's testimony exposed Morrison's partnership with San Francisco crime bosses. They infiltrated a fake orphanage in Flagstaff where children were sold to wealthy families back east. The records revealed Morrison's connection to territorial adoption agencies. They documented a network of corrupt sheriffs who ignored trafficking in exchange for political appointments. Every badge traced back to Morrison's recommendations. But their greatest success came through Celeste's most dangerous gamble. The territorial governors gathering in Prescott brought together Arizona's most powerful men. Morrison would attend as the guest of honor, celebrating his appointment to the territorial Supreme Court. "I'm going in," she announced over breakfast. Elijah nearly choked on his coffee. "Absolutely not. Think about it. Rich widow from back east, new to the territory, perfect cover. Morrison will recognize you." "Will he?" "I was one girl among hundreds. He saw property, not a person." She had a point. Men like Morrison rarely looked closely at their victims' faces. Still, Elijah hated the plan. Too many variables, too much risk. What if something goes wrong? "Then you get me out." She touched his hand across the table. "I trust you." Those 3 words carried the weight of everything between them. Partnership had become friendship. Friendship was becoming love. 2 weeks later, Celeste descended from a rented carriage in Prescott wearing silk and pearls. Her transformation was complete. Posture, voice, mannerisms, everything screamed Eastern money and social connections. Elijah watched from the hotel across the street, dressed as her bodyguard. The mountain man disguise worked perfectly in reverse. Everyone expected hired muscle to look exactly like him. The governor's reception sparkled with territorial ambition. Politicians and businessmen networked over champagne while their wives discussed fashion and gossip. Celeste moved through the crowd like she belonged. Morrison held court near the fireplace. Distinguished gray hair, expensive suit, the perfect image of judicial respectability. "Judge Morrison," she said, approaching with calculated timing. "Mrs. Catherine Whitmore, I've heard such impressive things about your work." He kissed her gloved hand with practiced charm. "The pleasure is mine, Mrs. Whitmore. Are you new to our territory?" "Recently widowed, considering investments in mining operations." His eyes sharpened with interest. Money always captured Morrison's attention. "Perhaps we could discuss opportunities. I have connections throughout the territory." She smiled demurely. "I'd be delighted." Over the next hour, Morrison revealed more than he intended. Pride made him boastful. He described his business partnerships in vague terms that meant everything to someone who understood the code. Transportation services meant human cargo. Labor recruitment meant slavery with extra steps. Territorial expansion meant spreading the network into New Mexico. Celeste memorized every detail while playing the role of impressed widow. The evening's climax came when Morrison offered to show her his private office, important documents, proof of his success, the same arrogance that had destroyed so many lives. "I'd be honored," she said. Elijah followed at a distance as Morrison led her upstairs. His hand rested on his concealed weapon. Morrison's office overlooked the main street. Maps covered one wall, filing cabinets lined another, a massive safe dominated the corner. "Impressive," Celeste breathed, moving toward the maps. Morrison preened under her attention. 20 years of careful planning, building the right connections. She studied the territorial routes marked in red ink. Each line represented a pipeline of human suffering. "You must keep detailed records, meticulous ones. Insurance against future problems." He was actually bragging about documentation that could hang him. Celeste moved closer to his desk, where several folders lay open. Shipping manifests, payment schedules, lists of names and ages. "Fascinating business model," she murmured, photographing documents with a concealed camera Elijah had acquired. Morrison stepped closer. Too close. His hand touched her shoulder. "Perhaps we could discuss a more personal partnership." Every instinct screamed danger. She forced herself to remain calm. How intriguing. His other hand moved to her waist. The familiar panic threatened to surface. Then the door burst open. "Mrs. Whitmore, the carriage is ready," Elijah announced in a servant's tone. Morrison stepped back, annoyed by the interruption. "Of course." Celeste gathered her composure with practiced ease. "Judge Morrison, thank you for such an enlightening evening." They escaped into the night with evidence that would reshape the territory. Later, in their hotel room, Celeste finally allowed herself to shake. "You were incredible," Elijah said softly. "I was terrified. Couldn't tell. You played him perfectly." She looked up at him. "Because I knew you were watching. I've never felt that safe before." Something shifted between them in that moment. The partnership had become something deeper, something worth protecting at any cost. They had Morrison's secrets now, but Morrison had noticed them too. The real war was just beginning. The photographs from Morrison's office revealed more than expected. Hidden within shipping manifests and payment schedules lay a name that made Elijah's blood freeze: Sarah Stone, age 16, purchased July 1879. His sister's death certificate was a lie. She had been sold, not killed, sold to a railroad baron in Denver who collected young women like fine art. Celeste found him staring at the evidence with shaking hands. "She might still be alive," she said quietly. 3 years in that monster's collection. Then we get her back. The revelation changed everything. This wasn't just about justice anymore. It was personal in ways that made Elijah dangerous, but Morrison had seen them coming. A message arrived the next morning, delivered by a nervous boy who fled before they could question him. Elegant handwriting on expensive paper. "Mr. Stone and Miss Foster, perhaps we should discuss terms like civilized people, the Grand Hotel restaurant, noon today. Come alone or Sarah dies screaming." Celeste crumpled the paper. "He knows everything," including my real name and Sarah's location. They had walked into a trap 3 years in the making. Morrison hadn't just been running a trafficking network. He had been hunting Elijah specifically, using his sister as bait. The Grand Hotel restaurant buzzed with lunch crowds when they arrived. Morrison sat in the corner booth, flanked by 2 well-dressed men who clearly weren't lawyers. "Please sit." His smile never reached his eyes. "I've taken the liberty of ordering." Elijah's hand rested near his concealed weapon. Celeste maintained her widow disguise, but every muscle was coiled for action. "Where is she?" "Safe. For now." Morrison sipped his wine casually. "Did you really think I hadn't noticed the great Elijah Stone hunting my associates? Your vigilante activities have been quite entertaining. Let her go. Take me instead." "Oh, but I already have you. Both of you, actually." Morrison gestured slightly. Armed men positioned themselves at every exit. The lunch crowd continued eating, oblivious to the danger surrounding them. "Here's what's going to happen," Morrison continued. "You'll confess to organizing the trafficking network, a rogue marshal gone bad. Very believable story." Celeste spoke for the first time. "And then you'll have a tragic accident in custody. Justice served. I become the hero who stopped the corrupt lawman." The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Morrison would eliminate his greatest threat while enhancing his own reputation. "Your sister dies with you, of course. Can't leave loose ends." Elijah lunged across the table. Morrison's guards moved faster, pressing gun barrels against both their skulls before anyone could blink. "Careful. Public places require discretion." They were escorted from the restaurant like willing guests. Morrison's influence extended everywhere. No one questioned the respectable judge handling territorial business. The territorial jail sat on Prescott's outskirts like a stone monument to frontier justice. Morrison owned the sheriff, the deputies, and the keys to every cell. They separated Elijah and Celeste immediately. Different wings, no communication. Classic technique to prevent coordination. Celeste's cell was smaller than expected. Stone walls, iron bars, a single window too narrow for escape. But Morrison had made one crucial mistake. He assumed she was helpless without Elijah's protection. The lock mechanism was standard territorial issue. 3 tumblers. Spring-loaded. She had picked similar locks in the brothel when searching for escape routes. Her hairpin bent into the perfect angle. Muscle memory guided her fingers through the delicate process. The lock clicked open after 20 minutes. The corridor stood empty. Guards assumed their prisoners were secured until morning. She moved like smoke through the jail's layout. Administrative offices occupied the first floor. Prisoner cells filled the second. Morrison's private room dominated the third. His temporary office contained exactly what she hoped to find: transfer orders for Elijah's execution, maps showing Sarah's location in Denver. Most importantly, Morrison's personal journal. The leather-bound book documented everything: names, dates, locations, financial transactions. Morrison's compulsive need for control had created the evidence of his own destruction. She photographed every page with their concealed camera. Insurance against whatever happened next. But the journal's final entries made her blood run cold. Morrison hadn't just been running a trafficking network. He was preparing to expand operations into territorial governance. Senators could be bought. Governors could be blackmailed. Federal oversight could be eliminated entirely. The network wasn't just about money anymore. It was about power on a scale that could reshape the American West. And tomorrow, he would eliminate the only 2 people who understood the full scope of his ambitions. Celeste returned to her cell and relocked the door. She needed Elijah to see Morrison's journal. Together, they could find a way out. But first, she had to reach him. The ventilation system connected both cell blocks through narrow passages originally designed for airflow. She could crawl through if she moved carefully. 20 minutes later, she dropped into Elijah's cell like a shadow made flesh. He spun around, ready to fight until he recognized her silhouette. "How did you escape?" "Same way we're both leaving." She showed him the journal. "But first you need to see this." His expression darkened as he read Morrison's plans. The trafficking network was just the beginning. Political corruption on an unprecedented scale. Federal judges bought and paid for. Territorial statehood controlled by criminal interests. "Sarah's location," she said, pointing to a specific entry. "Railroad baron named Hutchinson. Private car attached to the Denver line. She's been moving with the train circuit. Harder to track. But not impossible. Morrison's been receiving regular reports on her condition." They studied the journal together, planning their next move. Morrison expected broken prisoners awaiting execution. Instead, he would face something he had never encountered. 2 people who understood exactly what he was, what he represented, and what stopping him would cost. The real battle for the territory's soul would begin at dawn. But first, they had to survive the night. Dawn arrived with the sound of boots on stone. Morrison's execution squad assembled in the courtyard below, their rifles gleaming in morning light. The judge himself supervised preparations, ensuring his enemies would die according to territorial law. Celeste pressed against the cell window, counting weapons and exits. 6 guards, 3 escape routes, impossible odds that somehow felt manageable. "Ready?" she whispered. Elijah tested the lockpicks she had fashioned from wire mesh. "After you." They moved through the jail like partners in a deadly dance. 3 years of hunting criminals together had created an understanding beyond words. She anticipated his movements. He covered her blind spots. The first guard went down silently, unconscious before he hit the ground. Elijah's training in non-lethal takedowns proved invaluable. Morrison would expect violence from a desperate fugitive, not surgical precision from experienced professionals. They reached the armory as the execution squad realized their prisoners had vanished. Shouts echoed through stone corridors. Bootsteps thundered up staircases. "Weapons," Elijah said, selecting a rifle and ammunition. Celeste chose lighter gear, twin pistols, throwing knives, equipment suited for speed and stealth rather than direct confrontation. The jail's rear exit led into Prescott's business district. Dawn foot traffic provided perfect cover as they blended into the crowd. 2 more escaped convicts would attract attention. A well-dressed couple discussing morning plans remained invisible. Morrison's voice bellowed from the jail's front steps. Find them! $10,000 for their capture. Half the town mobilized within minutes. Bounty hunters, desperate men seeking easy money, citizens convinced they were protecting territorial justice. But Morrison had underestimated their preparation. Elijah led them through a network of safe houses established during their investigation, allies who owed favors, contacts who understood the true nature of Morrison's crimes, support systems built through months of careful relationship building. The blacksmith shop provided temporary sanctuary. Jonas Martinez had lost his daughter to Morrison's network 2 years earlier. His loyalty came with hatred that burned hotter than his forge. "Marshal Stone," he said, embracing Elijah like a brother. "Thought you were dead." "Working on it. We need to reach Denver." "Morrison's got every road watched, railroad too." Celeste studied a territorial map spread across his workbench. Standard routes were indeed compromised, but alternatives existed for people who knew where to look. "Mining trails," she said, tracing a path through the mountains. "Abandoned since the silver played out. Rough country. Take 3 days on horseback." "We don't have 3 days." Morrison's journal had revealed the timeline. Sarah would be transferred to a new location within 48 hours. After that, she would disappear permanently into an underground network that spanned multiple territories. Jonas provided horses and supplies. "Godspeed, Marshal. Bring that monster down." They left Prescott as manhunts spread through surrounding valleys. Morrison's influence reached every sheriff's office and territorial outpost, but the wilderness remained neutral ground. The mining trail wound through country that challenged both horses and riders. Steep grades, loose rock, paths barely wide enough for single-file travel. But it offered something more valuable than comfort. They made excellent time through the first day, covering ground that should have taken twice as long. Elijah's wilderness skills combined with Celeste's tactical planning created efficiency that surprised them both. But Morrison had anticipated their escape route. The ambush came at Copper Creek Pass, where the trail narrowed between towering rock walls. Professional gunmen positioned themselves perfectly, turning the passage into a killing zone. "Federal fugitives!" their leader shouted. "Surrender or be shot down!" Elijah and Celeste exchanged glances. These weren't local bounty hunters seeking reward money. They were Morrison's personal security, sent to eliminate witnesses permanently. The first shot shattered rock inches from Celeste's head. She rolled behind cover as bullets sparked off stone around them. 8 shooters, she called out, counting muzzle flashes. "Professional positioning." Elijah returned fire with measured precision. His shots weren't meant to kill, but to suppress and relocate. Each bullet drove their attackers into less advantageous positions. "Moving left," Celeste announced. She ghost-walked through scrub brush and boulder formations, using terrain like a second skin. Brothel survival had taught her to move unseen and strike without warning. The first gunman never saw her coming. Her knife found the pressure point that dropped him unconscious. His weapon became hers. 7 left, she signaled. The battle continued for 20 minutes. Professional soldiers versus equally professional hunters. Neither side gained decisive advantage until Celeste reached the high ground. From her elevated position, she could see Morrison's trap in its entirety. The gunmen weren't trying to capture them alive. They were herding them toward a secondary ambush point where escape would be impossible. She signaled the information to Elijah through their established system of hand gestures. His response was immediate and devastating. Instead of retreating as expected, he charged directly into the ambush zone. The gunmen repositioned to engage him, exposing themselves to Celeste's crossfire from above. The fight ended quickly after that. Unconscious men scattered across the pass like broken toys, their weapons secured, their horses commandeered. "Denver's 12 hours hard riding," Elijah said, checking his pocket watch. "Sarah's transfer happens at midnight." They mounted fresh horses and pushed deeper into territory that belonged to neither law nor outlaws. Behind them, Prescott burned with manhunt fever. Ahead lay their final confrontation with a monster who had destroyed too many lives. The race against time had begun in earnest. Morrison's journal had revealed one crucial detail about Sarah's location. The railroad baron kept his collection in private cars attached to commercial trains, mobile prisons that moved between cities on regular schedules. Finding her meant intercepting a moving target defended by armed guards and protected by legitimate business operations. But they had come too far to fail now. The Denver rail yards sprawled across the valley floor like iron arteries feeding a mechanical heart. Elijah and Celeste arrived as evening shadows stretched between towering locomotives and cargo cars. Morrison's journal had provided specific details. Hutchinson's private car would be attached to the 11:30 westbound freight. 3 guards, reinforced doors, windows barred from the inside. But they weren't planning a rescue mission anymore. Federal marshals surrounded the rail yard. Real ones, not Morrison's corrupt associates. Telegraph messages had reached the right people in Washington. Morrison's own documentation, photographed from his journal, had triggered a territorial investigation. Marshal Stone, a weathered man in a federal badge, approached their position. Marshal Williams, Denver office. We've been expecting you. The federal response had moved faster than anticipated. Morrison's network was too large, too organized, too dangerous to handle through local channels. How long have you known about the trafficking ring? Elijah asked. 6 months. Your evidence provided the missing pieces. Celeste studied the federal deployment. Sarah Stone? Car 7. We've confirmed her location. The operation unfolded with precision that Morrison's chaos could never match. Federal agents moved through the rail yard like clockwork, surrounding target cars and securing evidence. No gunfire, no violence, just overwhelming professional competence backed by legitimate authority. Hutchinson emerged from his private car in handcuffs, protesting his innocence to agents who had already documented his crimes. The railroad baron's collection of human property would testify against him in federal court. Sarah appeared in the doorway of car 7. 3 years of captivity had changed Elijah's sister, but her eyes still held the fire he remembered. She recognized him immediately despite his mountain man disguise. Eli? He reached her in 3 strides, wrapping her in an embrace that erased years of guilt and self-recrimination. She was alive, damaged but unbroken, survived through the same strength that ran in their family blood. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. You found me. That's what matters. But their reunion was interrupted by urgent news from Prescott. Morrison had learned about the federal operation. Rather than face justice, he had activated a final contingency plan that threatened to destroy evidence of the entire network. Fire, Marshal Williams said, reading the telegraph message. He's burning the courthouse, all records inside. 20 years of documentation were going up in smoke, names of victims, locations of safe houses, financial records that could free dozens of women and prosecute hundreds of criminals. Everything they had fought for would be lost. How long until it's gone? Celeste asked. 2 hours, maybe less. She looked at Elijah. The federal marshals were good at following procedure, but procedure took time. Paperwork, authorization, proper channels that moved too slowly for the emergency they faced. We go back, she said simply. Absolutely not, Marshal Williams interrupted. You're both wanted fugitives until this gets sorted out legally. Then we'll be fugitives who saved the evidence. Elijah understood her reasoning. They had operated outside the law for 3 years. One more unauthorized mission wouldn't change their legal status, but it could change everything for the victims still trapped in Morrison's web. Sarah grabbed her brother's arm. Don't leave me again. You're going to federal protection in Denver, safe house with real guards. And then? Then we finish what we started. The ride back to Prescott pushed their horses beyond reasonable limits. 60 miles of mountain terrain covered in 4 hours. Animals and riders alike ran on determination rather than strength. Smoke was visible from 10 miles away. The courthouse burned like a beacon against the night sky. Morrison had chosen the most public possible destruction of evidence. Citizens formed bucket brigades, while volunteer firefighters battled the blaze. But courthouse construction included a basement vault designed to protect territorial records from exactly this type of disaster. Steel doors, fireproof walls, independent ventilation system. Morrison stood in the town square, playing the role of concerned judge watching justice burn. His performance convinced everyone except the two people who knew his true nature. Back entrance, Celeste said, studying the building's layout. They approached through smoke and chaos while Morrison orchestrated his public display of grief. Citizens were too busy fighting the fire to notice two more figures joining the rescue effort. The basement vault required both their skills to penetrate. Elijah's strength forced the warped steel door. Celeste's expertise navigated the filing system to locate Morrison's personal records. 20 minutes inside a burning building, smoke inhalation that left them both coughing blood. But they emerged with the evidence that would reshape territorial justice. Morrison's private files contained everything the federal government needed: blackmail material on senators, financial records of political bribes, personal correspondence detailing the scope of his criminal empire. Most importantly, they found the master list: every woman who had passed through his network, names, ages, current locations, information that could reunite families and prosecute criminals across multiple states. Dawn revealed the courthouse as a smoking ruin. But Morrison's secrets had survived in the federal evidence bags that Elijah and Celeste carried to safety. The trials began 6 months later. Morrison faced federal charges in 3 territories. His network collapsed as co-conspirators chose cooperation over loyalty. Dozens of women were freed from bondage. Hundreds of families learned the truth about missing daughters. Elijah received a federal appointment as territorial marshal specializing in human trafficking cases. Sarah recovered slowly but completely, eventually testifying at trials that sent her captors to prison. Celeste became the first black woman hired as a federal investigator in Arizona Territory. Her expertise in reading criminal behavior and accessing information through unconventional sources proved invaluable to law enforcement agencies across the West. Their partnership evolved into something deeper: marriage performed by a federal judge who understood that justice sometimes comes in unexpected forms. Years later, when territorial historians wrote about the corruption trials that cleaned up Arizona politics, they rarely mentioned the mountain man and the escaped woman who had made it all possible. But the families who were reunited remembered. The women who were freed remembered. And in a small house outside Denver, 2 people who had found each other in the wilderness continued their work of making the West a little safer for everyone who called it home.